impacting you?
The tariffs?
Yeah.
They're definitely impacting me emotionally. It's just a great big distraction. I feel like I'm checking the news every 30 minutes for a change. Financially, not too bad yet. We've started to get notices for price increases from people. A lot of them are saying that they're going to start March 28. But I get an email probably every hour from a vendor or a customs broker saying that now a tariff applies to here or a price increase on here, but the prices only seem to be going up.
So how is it going to affect everyone?
It really depends on what you're selling.
Okay.
So this guy right here is made in Marysville, Ohio. So if you are selling this guy, then it won't affect you whatsoever. Not unless Canada puts a retaliatory tariff on that and you want to bring it into Canada. But the retaliatory tariffs are on things like food and t-shirts. So they're not on a lot of these industrial goods. They're on things that we have Canadian substitutes for.
And big question, who is it going to affect the most?
If you produce something in Canada for it to be sold to the US. So that could be manufacturing or just pulling a resource out of the ground like potash or oil. We manufacture some things here and those would be negatively affected, essentially making them unable to sell to the US.
How much have you paid so far?
Right now there's a break, there's a reprieve for 30 days, and this is the second 30-day reprieve that they've had. So right now though, it's not affected. But we did do our paperwork improperly and got hit with the tariffs. We were able to get it reversed though. A 30-day reprieve that was given by the president. So there's no duties on that sort of stuff, as long as you do the paperwork properly. And the paperwork is this US CMA compliance. I might have got the acronym wrong, but it's this document. It used to be called a NAFTA certificate. So you just have to say, certifying that this is made in compliance of that agreement. This stuff here though was actually made in Western New York at our plant in Buffalo. There was never going to be tariffs on this unless Canada had some retaliatory steel tariff. But we make so much steel in Canada that we export, I think, like 5 times as much. There's a lot of hydraulics in steel production here. So I don't think that this is ever going to be at risk. We had moved this production over to Western New York simply because buildings were so cheap there. It takes a lot of room to do all this. This type of product here, made in Canada, is the one that's being sold to American customers is the greatest risk. This is the one product that if this tariff goes through on the US side, we would get hammered on this really badly. These pins though here, a lot of these pins come from China. The Chinese pins though are much cheaper than the Canadian, obviously, by a factor of, I want to say, like 10. So if they put another 10, 20% on the pins, it's likely not going to have a major effect on there. We can cut these pins ourselves. We can get pins from North American Steel, but a lot of customers don't want to pay that much for it. And we only do it if we have to make like a special modification for them. I don't think that this is going to change much. There's tariffs coming on here. That's fine. These are the ones that we're concerned about. And the cut plate, we've already sort of mitigated that by producing some stuff in the US here. But really, we want to be producing on both sides of the border to handle all those problems.
Any business advice you could give out?
Do what I did. Yeah. I think the best case scenario for you is to be able to produce on both sides of the border and to have a very agile manufacturing process, if you can, which is not easy to do. Our products are fairly simple, so it allows us to do that. We can more or less produce these on either side. If you had really big equipment and so forth, it maybe gets a little bit difficult. But you should be able to produce and manufacture on both sides of the border. You need to be able to produce for Canadians from a Canadian factory and for Americans from an American factory.
Who is it going to hurt the most?
Usually, any sort of disruption always hurts the people who are at a disadvantage. People who are deep in debt, maybe don't have a lot of savings, so the mostly disadvantaged people. I think most businesses should be okay. If anything, the previous trade war was about a year, If you can survive a year, then you're okay. I got an update for you. Come, follow me. It turns out I was wrong. Canada does put retaliatory tariffs on the steel. So if you bring US steel into Canada, you got to pay 25%. So I shaved my beard to make it look like more time had passed before I learned this update. But I actually, immediately after shooting the other video, I went and checked. Our profile kits from our US plant, bringing them over is now much more complicated. We can still do it, but it's more complicated. Because we're on both sides of the border, we need to bring things over, and if stuff is coming over to be manufactured in Canada, but it's from US materials, we need to bring it over in a certain manner that's called a temporary import. So it's like a temporary import for the improvement of it before it goes back into the US. But like I said, it happens so infrequently. The problem is that we import steel from the US into Canada as well. They ask us the value of non-steel content, the kilograms of steel content, and the country of melt and pour. And they'll do that when you bring it across the border. So it's complicated things a lot.
Where do you get your sources from?
I think the best place to get the information is to go to the government websites themselves. Your taxes pay for all that information. They need to have proper documentation for it. They need to have the documentation for their own bureaucracy as well. You really ought to learn the proper way of doing it. The next person to talk to is a fellow business owner or another company who's doing the same thing.
Does the tariffs change anything?
It makes it more complex for sure, but I think it's just a business problem that has business solutions. Even this update on the retaliatory tariffs of the steel going back into Canada, which kind of throws a wrench in my whole works. Call me naive, but I call myself just an optimist. I think that there's business solutions to all these business problems. You just have to learn how to navigate. Always be reading and learning. But maybe don't read the news, because I feel a lot better since I stopped reading the news a week ago. A lot of it depends on the company you work for. Here we're a family business. A lot of people have been with us for 45 years. So a little slow down, not going to mean anything to us. We thought it was like really slow or about flat for about the last year and a half. We ended up moving warehouses. We moved 3 of them and upgrading a lot of equipment. Just today we put an offer on another building locally here because this shop is really due for an upgrade. There's always opportunities out there, but like I said, I'm an optimist.
For people that aren't a business owner, how is it going to affect just the regular, ordinary person?
You're definitely going to be paying a little more for everything. How much, I don't know. Who would have thought that eggs would be so hard to get? I can't predict all that. I think a lot of the changes are going to be really industry specific. It seems to be every year it's more nuanced, meaning like it affects one industry at one time but another at another time. I remember in 2014 we had a major slowdown in just the hydraulics industry because of the price of oil. So there's a lot of hydraulics in the oil and gas industry. And in that one, our entire industry sort of shrunk by about 20%. And I was talking to friends that were in maybe automotive and so forth, and business is great for them. If they put tariffs to encourage US manufacturing, you really don't have any choice but to increase your US manufacturing. The tariffs that right now are in effect are the exact same ones that were in effect 6 years ago, and it lasted for 1 year. Right now we're 1 month in. Actually, one of the major challenges of the tariffs is that to bring manufacturing over into the US is that I feel like a lot of people will be doing it our way, sort of bringing it over piecemeal rather than one large facility. And you can't move a whole facility in a short period of time, but you can definitely move like a little department over there. But the issue is that if you move just one part of one component of the whole assembly over there, then you're doubling the amount of back and forth across the border. Which, there's paperwork that you can do for like a temporary import and all that, but it's quite difficult to navigate. So when we buy the steel in Western New York though and bring it over into Canada, there's no duties on it or tariffs on it because it was already originated. It was Canadian poured steel. But then we run into a problem when we can send it back into the US. Turns out that Canada, in response to the US tariffs, Canada put tariffs on that. I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that until I tried to import steel. We have a content team that's generating content just for you. So why don't you like and subscribe?